Hello everybody, Andy here from Glass Half Dead, and today we are doing a good old-fashioned classic stats show. That's right, we are at the end, the true end of the second season, right? We're about to go into the third season, and so we are looking at the stats for the end of that. So what we are looking at right now is the stats since the 15th of December up until the 5th of January. Now, obviously, there is the Christmas period in that, but basically, these are the final stats that we're going to have that have the balanced data slate in effect up until we get the two new teams. Although, minor addendum to what I literally just said. I think the balanced data slate came out on like a Wednesday. It was like the 12th or something, can't quite recall. And there was a few big tournaments on that weekend. Some of them did use the balanced data slate, some of them didn't. Now, when you're looking at, for example, 40k, normally these big tournaments need to have like a cut-off date for new rules to be submitted. What this means is, you know, because they're working in a very, very, very different system to what we're working in. If GW comes out with a big balance change that changes their list, and so they might have to swap units, that's very difficult for a big game like 40k to do, and you can't really put the onus on the player to do that within a few days. In Kill Team Land, we are significantly more agile, and frankly, the designers don't make us buy new models on a very regular basis. So if something changes, Kill Teamers seem pretty happy to just say, yeah, let's use this immediately. So, with that said, whether or not those tournaments should have immediately played the new balanced data slate is, you know, up to them. I'm not really fussed either way. I think it's totally fine to do that kind of immediately. But on the flip side, people would have played and potentially practiced on a specific rule set, and so it's, you know, and they would have bought the ticket on that rule set, and so maybe they, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, just so you're aware, cool. What we are looking at are 615 games played. That's from the 15th of December till the 6th of January, all since the balanced data slate. It's all just taken straight off of BCP. However, it's taken off of BCP by the Spanish community, and you can find these in the Spanish Discord if you want to go check that out. Specifically, their data guy is called Feur, F-E-U-R, so big shout out to him, and a big shout out to Ace for passing these stats on to me. I'm all the way over to the side of this screen because in a moment here, I'm going to put relevant graphs for you to look at, because who doesn't love a good old-fashioned graph? Yeah. So, first things first, we have countries that these have come from. 175 games in the USA, 117 in Spain, 84 in the UK. That's a total of 615 across the world for these 3 weeks. And again, keeping in mind that, you know, Christmas. So really, if I'm honest, this is like 1 week. You know, it's really not much. Yeah. I mean, how many tournaments did we have over the 2-week Christmas period? I'm guessing not many, frankly. And I have no idea which of these games were played using the new balanced data slate or not. Again, I don't know. It's not data that we capture, right? As I mentioned, I know for a fact that some of them did, and I'm pretty sure some of them didn't as well, as we will soon see when we look at some of the numbers. Some of the teams that got buffed or nerfed do not look like they got buffed or nerfed in these numbers, so yeah, who knows. Right, for example, just an amusing note on small data sets, I suppose, but if we look at, you know, the win rates, Ecclesiarchy, there's just one guy in Poland who played 14 games with them, right? So that's a great example of the flexibility of these numbers. 14 wins puts a faction into seeming like the second highest win rate faction. So Ecclesiarchy have a 0.32% pick rate, but a 71.43% win rate, making them the second best faction in the game. But if we then look at tournaments that played 4 or more rounds, so you could argue that is a better representation of skill level, potentially, as it cuts out a lot of smaller tournaments where naturally you can get higher meta skews and swings, right? So if you look at tournaments that played 4 or more rounds, Ecclesiarchy aren't even on the list, right? So it's great to have numbers, it's great to look at them, but keep in mind that these numbers are very small data sets, and so their accuracy is dependent on individuals as opposed to collective kind of aggregation of numbers when you're at these levels, you know. Right, okay, so before we dive into like interesting numbers about win rates, pick rates, etc., and also kind of extrapolating a few things that we can truly decide from them, I would like to say that if you are a subscriber to my channel, and of course you all should be, I'd like to give you a big double hello. Wow, wasn't that wholesome? Truly the wholesomeness knows no bounds in the world of Glass Half Dead. Hey, if you like what I'm doing here, consider liking, subscribing, leaving a comment. That'd be super cool of you. Thank you very much. If you really like what I'm doing here, do consider checking me out on Patreon. Honestly, it's a glorified tip jar. So thank you to all of those patrons. But I do give a few benefits. I give a lot of like additional unboxings and just more videos of me in general. Yeah, there you go. Cool. So first things first, some interesting notes to pick out of the data. Felgor Ravagers have the tightest matches when losing, by which I mean when they lose, they tend to lose by the least amount of points. Whereas Farstalker Kimband, on the flip side, have the tightest matches when winning by the fewest number of points when they do. What does this mean? Well, you could look at that and say that perhaps Felgor Ravagers are arguably one of the best teams to play. Or at least when you win, you're going to be giving a really good fight, right? And on the flip side, perhaps the Kroot, the Felstalker Kimband are actually one of the most difficult factions to play, and I think that's a really interesting way to view the game. If you look at those numbers, they don't necessarily say anything on their own, but if we try and kind of put something to that number, I think that's a very interesting way to look at it. If you value giving your opponent a tight game, then actually Felgor and Kinband are possibly some of the best factions for you, and that's really interesting to think. Elucidian Starstriders, however, are the most swingy. They either wreck face or have their face wrecked. And the most consistent middle of the pack with games that go to the wire every time is actually Warp Coven. They are the most likely to only just barely manage to eke out a win or only just lose. Honestly, very Zinch, so that's pretty cool. You know, it's pretty cool. I approve. Now, of course, when it comes to pick rates and win rates, I'm only looking at 16 plus players and 4 plus round tournaments. The numbers are different if you look at everything, so just keep in mind, as mentioned earlier, small data set here either way, but I think that it's interesting to look at the less skewy data. Yeah, because you can get some weird, for example, if you look at more of the everything data, you get a lot more compendium teams. So, whereas when people tend to go to a larger tournament, they tend to not take compendium teams. And even that is an interesting point of data to try and interpret. Does that mean that people take these larger tournaments more seriously and play stronger teams? Or perhaps does it mean that these larger tournaments scare away newer players who are just bringing along a casual team? Don't know. It's not my job to interpret data. That's not what this video is about, so I wouldn't even dare to speculate. Right, Legionary have double the pick rate of any other faction. That's like over 10% of the meta is Legionary, which is pretty crazy. Then we have Intercession. That makes sense, right? But then equal third, we have Hand of the Archon, Void Dancers, and Commandos. Now, quite interestingly, again, if we were to look at the overall data, basically the same, except Hand of the Archon way down. And again, what the hell does that mean? I really don't know, but I suspect that what it might mean again is that perhaps the more serious players, the more competitive players, think that Hand of the Archon has serious play in a big tournament. But the more casual players don't, and so therefore don't take them, or they just don't find Hand of the Archon fun. Which would really be an interesting way for GW to look at data and say, not just, oh, people aren't picking this faction to take at all, but competitive players are taking this faction, but casual players aren't. What do we do about that? I think that'd be quite interesting. Lowest picks on the flip side are Gellerpox and Blooded, tied for the lowest picked factions. Then Chaos Cults, interestingly. And then tied for third lowest picked is Novitiates and Starstriders. Now what's really interesting, I think we can all agree, is that every faction I just mentioned, apart from possibly Novitiates, are considered very strong factions. But they're not really getting picked very much, which is very interesting. Now, that's not to say that Novitiates aren't strong, to clarify, but in today's meta, when we talk about strong factions, we don't really point out Novitiates that often. But Gellerpox, Blooded, Chaos Cults, Starstriders are all in contenders for top tier factions. So very interesting. Finally, of course, we come to the all-important win rates. And so win rates at the very top. Who is it? Even after the nerfs, or perhaps because of this data set, not the nerfs, and I'm guessing not the nerfs. Because yes, that's right, it's the Chaos Cultists with the mind-blowing 75% win rate. Somebody get GW on the phone and tell them that these Chaos Cultists are not actually Eldar. It's okay to nerf them in a way that actually matters. Secondly, we have Felgor Ravagers with a 63% win rate. Then Exaction Squad and Commandos tied at 62.5% win rate. And it was at this point that I realised I've got no idea what's going on with this data set. Because of course, what's going on, right? Again, I have to assume that we're getting a weird mixture of which tournament is playing which rule set at this point. So Commandos, in one version of the game, have been nerfed, but in another are still top tier. Exaction Squad in one version of the game have been buffed, or are, from what other people say, completely bottom tier. But actually, it turns out they're tied third for highest win rate. So, however, Chaos Cultists obviously will be getting a nerf. I have to assume that this current data set is not including those. Felgor Ravagers are a really strong team, so honestly, I don't think that anything that's been done to them is going to change their win rates. They're a great team. Great team. We shall, of course, point out the perfectly balanced teams at 50% win rate are Greenskins, a compendium team, all right, and Warp Coven. Lovely, lovely. What are Greenskins doing there? If one person takes them to a 4-round tournament and they win 2, lose 2, that's a 50% win rate. So there you go. That's the beauty of numbers. They mean nothing. They mean everything, but they mean nothing. And of course, Warp Coven being 50-50 is beautiful, because really that's where all chaos should sit thematically, because anytime they get too strong, one of the other gods will step in. Then we get to the guys we actually care about. Who cares about all the other numbers I've just said? The bottom 3 teams, aka the teams I will look at playing next, and it's Blooded, Kassakin, and Hyrotech Circle. What the tits, mate. And so I think it's relatively safe to say that with Cults being the best and Kassakin almost the worst, and Blooded, what? All of these win rates are from before the balance data slate. But hey, we haven't had a stat show in a while, so this was nice to know. And in a few months, once we've got like 2,000 games, all since the balanced data slate was 100% in effect, we can look at it again, and it will include the 2 new teams, and we can see where they really sit in the meta. Or, I suppose, how easy they are to learn. Yeah, because that's going to actually probably show what you know, an easy team is going to do better, faster than a tough team, right? Blooded, who are in this data set a loser, apparently, that is also where they began life until people realized how to play them. So, you know, yeah. A team being hard to learn doesn't mean they're a bad team. It just means that them dominating the scene is going to take a little bit longer. And that is today's stats show. So, again, small data sets, and I specifically asked for them to be small because what's the point in looking back past a balance update, right? And then today, the day of Warhammer World, and the 2 new teams being released, well, we're about to have a huge injection of new data to look at, so that's pretty cool too. And is also going to invalidate the last 2 weeks of data, pretty much. So, cool. I'm pretty hyped for, you know, in a month or two to look at data again. But for right now, I would again like to thank the Spanish community for sending this my way so that I can take a look at it. It's very interesting. I'm very happy to see, and confused to see, Hyrotech Circle being so low. That's perfect for me. I've been playing them in my last few games. So I'm pretty hyped that they're sucking, so I can now play them guilt-free and go and smash some face. Anyway, if you've made it to the end of the video, I'd like to give you a big triple hello. Wow. Wholesome AF, as foretold. Again, a like, a comment, a subscribe, that'd all be super cool. Thank you very much. And if you really like what I'm doing here, do consider checking out my Patreon. I've recently unboxed a whole load of stuff. For example, this. Do you know what this is? Netrunner, the Android Netrunner, the card game. Summoner Wars right here off screen. Sky Tear Horde, Dice Throne. Man, I'm going a little bit card game and board game crazy. I'm not gonna lie. Fucking love mechanics. Holy shit. Get on my dick. Love it. All right. Bye.